All yours.
All right, happy October, everyone. This meeting of the Student Senate is called to order, and I would like to welcome Libby Messman, Pascagoula West Hall Senator, to center us and open us in prayer, if she is so willing. Oh, there she is. Okay, awesome. Either mic is good. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Dear God, we thank you for our opportunity to serve Our Lady's entrusted community. May we, members of the Student Senate, be servants of hope and instruments of great change. May we listen and lead with humility, kindness, courage, and love. May we develop a community that inspires all to engage in our daily vocation to be the truest brothers and sisters we can be. For our dedication, may we call this community our family and this university our home. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Awesome. Thanks so much, Libby. Appreciate that. We can now move on to roll call, and I'll hand it over to Catherine.
Dan Bowden-Diestel. Isabella Garcia.
Here.
Danielle Schermerhorn. Sarah Kirsch. John Mansfield. Christina Escadillo. Anoop Sunkara. John Klim. Perfect. Jordan Leiden. Niels Casperson. Maggie Allen. Albertina Estrada Martinez. Madison Nemeth. Henry Jackson. Benjamin Earhart.
Present.
Jason Thomas.
Here.
Natalie Ortega. Molly Schrock. Lainey Teeters. Ahmed Al-Hossani. Alec Brayler.
Here.
Bianca Burnett. Carson Thompson. Libby Messman. Anisha Japira. Michael Lynch. Miles Kelly. Alex Kobolowski.
Here.
Patrick Lee. Grace Franco. Teresa Salazar. Henry Bates. Blake Johnson. Johnny O'Meara. Renee Pearson. Charlie Limco. Sam Canova. Ricardo Poses Garza. Connor Delaney. Rachel Engel. Thomas Davis. Oh, yeah. Aaron Benavides.
Here.
Grace Stevenson.
Here.
Mairead Pfaff. Julia or Kurt.
Here.
David Hongs. Estefan Linares. And Karen Kennedy. Beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. I think we will keep the You show rolling. And could you give us a brief rundown of minutes from last week?
Perfect. So last week we had diversity training with Paige Jackson from the Multicultural Student Programs and Services. And then the nomination of Devin Diggs as president of the SHIRT committee was approved. And then Order 2021-10 to amend the Constitution to prohibit student union investments and consumption of forced labor was tabled.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns on minutes from last week? All right, seeing none, we can move into executive announcements. The first one is, oh, this one is mine. This is an update on the ad hoc committee on Title IX policies and procedures. So you all should have received an email yesterday from Provost Marilyn Miranda, and she informed you all that a committee has been informed to advise the Office of the General Counsel regarding the requirements of the new Title IX regulations and the university's obligations under Title IX more generally. So Maura Ryan is serving as chair on this group. Members include elected representatives from 3 standing committees of the Academic Council, as well as appointed faculty recommended by the Faculty Senate. And then myself, as well as our lovely Executive Cabinet Director of University Policy, Abby Wolf, and the President of the Graduate Student Union are the 3 student leaders who were asked to serve on that. So we'll be meeting 90 minutes a week until the end of the semester, hopefully with a recommendation by November 20th. If you're on University Policy Department or the Gender Relations Department, or if Title IX just interests you in general, please feel free, if you have any questions, comments, concerns about this process, to direct them to either myself or Abby. We'd be more than happy to bring it to the standing committee. So all ears. And now we can transition to Rachel, who will give us an update on the COVID-19 Off-Campus Student Advisory Council and their ongoing work this semester.
Thank you, Sarah. So the Student Advisory Council has been going really well so far. We've been meeting once a week to have kind of discussions about just like the state of the university and what we can do moving forward. We were able to put on a very successful senior kickback event on Friday. And so I thought that went well. And now we're working on expanding that, hopefully being able to offer that to the entire senior class. We were a little bit constricted for the first round, so it's just for off-campus seniors, but hoping to make it a little bit larger and more accessible to our friends on campus as well. So looking forward to that. And then if you ever have any questions about that, feel free to speak to me or Connor or Blake or Sam. We're all serving on it.
Sweet, thanks, Rachel. I will hand it over to Aaron for the Student Advisory Group for Campus Reopening update, as well as 2 other updates that he has up his sleeve. So
I'll try to be brief. So on Monday, the Student Advisory Group for Campus Reopening met as we meet every other week. And so I'll briefly run through a lot of the things that we touched on that also have been released in a lot of email communications from the Division of Student Affairs or from Erin Hoffman-Harding herself. First, looking into the remainder of this semester, there are new cold weather locations and the outdoor tents are going to start being heated really soon. So again, just preparing to make those accommodations as the weather changes and we get into the swing of fall. Indoor dining in the dining halls is beginning on Monday. And so that's really exciting. That information was of course released earlier. And they're hoping to expand that to the student centers at a later date. The health department is really more comfortable with us doing a phased-in approach of these things. That way we can, have time to look at the data and make sure that we aren't going down any wrong paths as we try to ease up on the restrictions and accommodate student life. Similarly, dorm rooms are now open to like guests of the same dorm. Again, those same restrictions of, I believe it's 2 guests. Of course, you need to be in the same dorm, masked, doors open. And they are hoping that, again, if everything looks well, then a little bit later down the line to open that up to non-residents and the 2-4 areas as well. So again, barring any complications, we look forward to seeing that happen. The conversations surrounding testing at the end of the semester as we prepare to go home, those conversations are still being had. And so we're hopeful that information will be released soon on that. Then shifting gears to look ahead towards the spring semester. Actually, before we get there, the 10-week winter break, the university, as you know, is looking into different internships, coursework, and other learning opportunities, of course, dedicated to the overall development of the student body during this very extended period of time. I know that the College of Arts and Letters just sent out a survey requesting like what people's interests were, so be on the lookout for that from the university as well. I believe that should be forthcoming. Again, as we look to the spring, one thing that we have all raised has been the real burnout that students have experienced, given we are at the halfway mark of the fall semester with no break. And so that is something that university admin are, thinking about seriously and trying to see how professors can adjust, the rhythm of their courses so that things don't all line up into one big midterm and final, maybe multiple assignments over the semester. So this is something that faculty and deans are thinking about just to be more accommodating because we recognize this is a really big issue, especially next semester. The only break that we will have will be on Good Friday. And then lastly, for COVID related, the testing center is actually moving. So the crew is moving to the North Dome, which I believe that was announced today. And so there will not be testing over the weekend as they make the move over. That's enough of the student advisory group. Now, on an update this week, Rachel, Sarah, and I confirmed that we will be presenting to the Undergraduate Education and Student Life Committee of the Board of Trustees next Thursday. They have asked us to speak, of course, on how the university has handled opening in the middle of a pandemic. So we will be preparing our report on that. If you have any concerns that you would like raised, like just let us know. Of course, we're going to be spending a lot of time working on this in the next 2-3 days as we prepare to send off that report to the board. Lastly, in light of Senate Order 2021-10, an order amending the Constitution to prohibit student union investments and consumption of forced labor, Rachel, Sarah, and I will be meeting with the investment office tomorrow. And so we will be happy to provide an update on that meeting next week. And of course, we have been talking to Ricardo and the co-sponsors of said bill. So we have gathered questions. And this is something, obviously, since it was a big concern, that we are working to address. That's all for me.
Awesome. Thank you for that trifecta, Aaron. I will just briefly mention October is both Relationship Violence Awareness Month as well as LGBTQ History Month. And the GRC is putting on some really great programming for both of those 2 months. And I've linked their calendar of events if you're interested in attending any of those. I also have linked a special event tonight, which is called a White Allyship Panel, which is sponsored by MSPS, which is where the lovely Paige works, as well as Kavanaugh Hall and Howard Hall staffs. That is tonight. If you're interested in that event, I think it could be a really great addition to the training that we engaged in last week. Wonderful, but without further ado, we can move on to general orders. And I will invite Ricardo to speak to SO 2021-10, in order amending the Constitution to prohibit student union investments in and consumption of forced labor.
Hello, I hope you guys can hear me. Thank you so much, Sarah, for bringing me forward. So yeah, thank you again all for hearing us on this important order again. Well, we've made some significant progress over the last weeks, especially when building our team and kind of like paving the way forward to be fully prepared to bring this to you guys in the near future. We still need a little bit of time to finalize everything, kind of like resolve all these question marks surrounding the order and make sure that all the, again, very reasonable critiques that have been levied at it are fully answered before we bring it to you guys for, I guess, your consideration. So if you look at the order itself, which I believe is linked on the agenda, you'll see that the order itself is comprised of 2 clauses. So I do apologize for being a little brief in addressing the critiques last time, given the time pressures and concerns. But I will be discussing those a little more fully at this time. If you're interested in fully discussing this, I'm very happy to meet with you individually, and we can go over the entire thing according to your leisure, I guess. So for the first clause, it's kind of a little harder to implement because it kind of like falls in some degree outside of the purview of the student union constitution, I guess. The investment office, of course, is an external entity. So we can't just go to them and be like, stop this. We have to work with them in order to achieve this. So as I guess Rachel, Aaron, and Sarah said in their exec announcements, they are going to be meeting with the investment office on Friday to bring our questions to them, essentially as kind of like a benchmark to see the current status of investment in companies profiting from unethical labor practices, to see if there are any extant plans for divestment in such companies, and if so, what the timeline may be for this divestment to take place. So it's kind of like meant as a litmus test to ascertain to what extent this resolution is required on the first point. You see section A in the order, and see where we move forward with that. For the second clause, it is a little easier because this is something that the student constitution does manage, which is fiscal practices and policies. So we do have full purview and authority to look into that, I believe. So while we do have the ability to do so, the authority to do so as per the constitution, we still have to see how exactly this would be enforced. Who would be responsible for ensuring that these financial practices take place as we are proposing they are, and just in general, how this would fit in the various roles that already exist in the Constitution. So at this time, we believe the best way forward, besides the wonderful and again, very gracious offer by our execs to meet with the investment office to look into the first section of this order, we believe it is expeditious to refer it to the Committee on the Constitution at this time. To the wonderful Thomas Davis and his team, who have been surprisingly actually well-intentioned in meeting with them. So it's a long story, guys. Let's just say that Thomas Davis is a very funny guy, and I love him so much. Nothing more need be said. But yes, we believe that is the best way to make sure that the order fits into the Constitution in a way that is practical, in a way that can be enforced, and more importantly, in a way in which we can resolve this very important issue that me and my team believe is extremely relevant to the Student Senate at this time. So that said, I am going to be formally motioning, I don't know what else I need to say, to refer these order to the Committee on the Constitution at this time. So I motion to refer SO 2021-10 to the Committee on the Constitution. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Out of the game, Madison. Okay, do we have any points of debate on this motion to table? To refer to the Committee on the Constitution. I should specify the terms.
Yes.
Any points of debate?
So you only correct me when I'm wrong, Thomas.
Okay, seeing none, we can now move into a vote on Ricardo's motion to table SO 2021-10 to the Committee on the Constitution. All in favor, please raise your hands. Fabulous. All opposed? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ricardo. It is now tabled to the Committee on the Constitution, who I'm sure will be hard at work on it soon. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you guys again.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Okay, moving on to item B, we have one senator appointment to the Campus Life Council given the current vacancy. I know Rachel is very excited to now have a full body of the CLC. The last director was just appointed earlier this week, which is wonderful. So in terms of this proceeding, Thomas has linked a voting form to item B. If you have any interest in filling this vacancy, you can either just raise your hand and indicate your willingness, availability, desire. Also welcome to make brief remarks, but not required. So at this time, I would just like to ask if anyone has a willingness or desire to serve on the Campus Life Council. Yeah, Ricardo.
Just out of curiosity, does it have to be a senator or can it be a past president?
I will clarify with Thomas. I do believe it has to be a Hall senator. It has to be a Hall senator. Yes. Thank you, Ricardo. Good clarifying question. So any Hall senator that has interest in serving on the Campus Life Council? Isabella? Exciting. Okay, wonderful. Would you like to make any brief remarks or you just want to indicate your interest?
I think it'd be nice. I like you all, so it'd be nice to hear from you and to advocate for you and to advocate for everybody.
That was lovely. Thank you, Isabella. Okay, great. Do we have anyone else that has indicated interest? All right, I will let it hang for 5 more seconds, but if not, I believe we will just vote. Correct, Thomas? Yeah, okay, wonderful. All right, seeing no further interest, we should continue to vote just for the procedure of it all. Okay, wonderful. So if you guys could open up the link on item B under general orders. I'm opening it up as we speak. Yes, thank you, Thomas. Episode 2. Great. Okay, yes, you have options, Isabella, or abstain. I will give you all 30 seconds to complete this form.
Should I play Jeopardy music?
Okay, folks, 10 more seconds. Okay, Thomas Davis says we've got it. Congratulations, Isabella. You are the newest member of the CLC. It's wonderful to have a... Okay, wonderful. I believe Sister Sue is one of the rectors serving on it. So Baden ladies, very strong. Love it. Okay. Moving right along, folks. We now have agenda item C is SS 2021-17, which is a resolution to educate COVID-19 positive students upon release from isolation and provide post-discharge testing. And I would invite either Grace, Natalie, Ria, or Grace D to read this resolution to us all. Yeah, that would be awesome. Come on down, Grace.
Grace is also on the line. Other Grace.
They are indeed.
Not Rhea.
Grace is.
Grace D.
Okay. Okay, so a resolution to educate COVID-19 positive students upon release from isolation and provide post-discharge testing. Whereas the student government and student senate recognize the importance of educating recovered COVID-19 patients on the continued risks and unknowns of this novel virus. Whereas antibodies and immunity levels can vary by individual and research about these characteristics remains ongoing. Whereas student leaders should strive to minimize misinformation and confusion regarding COVID-19, and that may be circulating among our student body population. Whereas encouraging recent statistics regarding Notre Dame's COVID-19 cases should only make us more dedicated to staying on campus throughout the duration of this semester. Whereas all students, regardless of their past COVID-19 diagnosis, should continue to follow university health and safety protocols. Whereas the Notre Dame student government reaffirms its commitment to helping keep our student body safe, healthy, and on campus. Resolved by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame GLOC that the COVID contact tracing team and University Health Services, one, during the phone call releasing of a community member from isolation, contact tracers should follow the same script that educates patients on the points listed above. The university should make available voluntary post-discharge tests for students wishing to know if they're still infected past the contagious and isolation period. Sorry, this is harder than it looks. 3, the university should make a consistent policy pertaining to the number of days in which a positive COVID-19 patient lives in isolation. Currently, students have been told their isolation ends both 10 days after symptoms and the test date, so further clarification is needed.
Great, thank you so much, Grace. I'll now open the floor to any questions on this resolution, and remember, they can be directed to Grace, Natalie, or Grace on Zoom. So would invite any questions at this time. Yeah, Lainey.
Yeah, so I just have a quick question. So the script above, would that just be like the whereas clauses, or it's the first clause of the result?
Yeah, so the same script, so basically contact tracers from like anecdotal evidence have been saying different things to like on-campus students versus off-campus students, or even just variations within different people that have been in isolation. So just making that like a standardized script that they're saying to everyone.
Thanks, Lainey. Any further questions? Don't be shy, folks. Do I hear a second? Okay, wonderful. We can vote on that motion. All in favor? All opposed? Wonderful. We are now in debate on this resolution. Any points of debate anyone would like to raise? Yeah, Isabella. All right, do I hear a second? Okay, we can vote on that motion. Great, all in favor, all opposed? Wonderful, okay, and now we are entering our final vote on SS 2021-17, which is a resolution to educate COVID-19 positive students upon release from isolation and provide post-discharge testing. If you are in favor, you can raise your hand. Wonderful, if you are opposed, indicate that. Wonderful, okay, great work, great, so this resolution passes, and we really appreciate your advocacy for mental health and testing. Good work, folks. We are just cruising right along, and I will pass it over to the man of the hour, Thomas Davis, for a report on the Committee on the Constitution suggestions for SO 2021-09.
Hello, everyone. Well, that was loud. So thank you so much for referring this amendment to our committee. We're very grateful because this offered the committee an opportunity to take a look at something substantial, offer our suggestions, and it led to a lot of debate. So we're very thankful for that. Quick overview over the last 2 weeks, which was a little bit more time than I promised Aaron, but he was so gracious in that. We were able to discuss this both in subcommittee and in full committee, and last night we were able to approve our finalized suggestions. I would have liked to have something more formal and something written down to present to you, But the process behind this, I'm just going to run through those suggestions because I don't want to take up too much time, as well as the fact that in the Constitution, it states that once things are approved, it needs to be at least 3 days of time between it's finalized and before it's heard in the Senate. So I want to get that done now so then we can address this as soon as possible in our next meeting. You'll notice on the agenda for this week, it's already placed in new business. So this should come to a vote to your consideration once it's in the format of a resolution, which I'll finalize and send to Sarah over the weekend. So I'll be very frank, the structure of this committee, or of this amendment through our committee changed quite a bit from what you originally saw 2 weeks ago. Ultimately, the committee first decided that Article 5 in its entirety should be repealed. That pertains to the Executive Programming Board. Originally, this this amendment had stated a restructuring of Article 5. However, the committee unanimously found that Article 5, the EPB, should be struck in its entirety at this moment. What we'd like to do, and with that, all the other articles renumbered accordingly thereof. What we'd like to do is move this amendment, which we think is important, the same general idea, under the responsibilities of the Chief of Staff in Article 2, Section 3. There's already a point in Article 2, Section 3, subsection H, which mentions the responsibility of the Chief of Staff to chair the EPB. We're going to, similarly to how the Committee on the Constitution and how the Committee on the Budget are structured in the Constitution in Article 3, a longer clause with subsections that elaborate what is constitutionally bound for this committee. Ultimately, a main focus of our committee discussion was to eliminate the number of constitutional responsibilities of members of the committee. With that came the important distinction between the original composition, which had 10 members plus the student union secretary. We decided to remove some of them based on their schedules, as well as relevance to programming. That leads into the committee's next suggestion. Originally, the EPB was the Executive Programming Board. The committee has chosen to adopt an idea that any similar committee should be focused on programming and not policy. Discussions about student union policy amongst the branches can happen at any time, over lunch, over dinner, in a more formal setting and an informal setting, through discussion amongst the executive members of each branch. We have decided that this committee, or we suggest that this committee, should be focused simply on policy. And with that, alters the composition. This removes the student union president, or student body president, and the student body vice president, as their ideas of programming can be articulated and presented through their chief of staff, who will chair this committee. It also removes representation by the Judicial Council president, as well as the chairperson of the FMB. Both of those branches are responsible for little to no programming throughout the student union, and their constitutional obligation to be on that committee would simply hinder their operation of their own branches. There are programming-centered branches of the student union that includes sub and CCC. So in addition to their executive officers, we've chose to adopt the idea that their division chairs of the CCC should also be included in membership, as well as the co-directors of programming from sub included in that membership, as well as the social chairs from HPC. The 4 class presidents and the off-campus president will remain in our suggestion. The members removed will still have the opportunity in the Constitution to attend these meetings. It will be specifically mentioned, however, not constitutionally bound. In addition to that, we also thought there are other organizations within the student union, special interest orgs, which handle, such as Bookstore Basketball, PRISM, Knights of Columbus, Debate, I'm missing one, JPW, big programming branches that spend a lot of their time centered around a small portion of the year, a month or so. To have them constitutionally bound to be on this committee week by week, bi-weekly, whatever it may be, not responsible. So we'll give them the opportunity to come to these meetings, possess right of agenda for the relevant periods of time when they need to address programming from their special interest org. All members have the right of agenda to make sure that they can represent their positions and their programming from the respective branches to the board, unless Ricardo packs the court with division chairs. He might. The secretary has been removed. Anything pertaining to the Constitution obligation to record minutes has been removed. That's about it from a structural standpoint. The last point is not as important, but there is a specific clause in the original order that mentions parliamentary procedure shall not be followed. Ooh, that didn't settle well with me. The committee will be addressing the concept of parliamentary procedure going forward. It will be addressed. It's in the overarching section or Article 1 of the Constitution. That needs to be addressed, and we will be. Obviously, you can see committee by committee, Parley Pro is enforced differently. I'm here at these meetings. That's why it's different here versus other meetings. There is an there is a way to get around Parley Pro. That is no problem. So simply outlawing Parley Pro in a committee does not work well when another constitutional clause states that Parley Pro should be in the Constitution at all times. So we'll be addressing that at a later date, but specifically stating that a branch or a committee anywhere in the Constitution does not have to follow Parley Pro just does not make sense from a jurisprudence standpoint in a way. So that's what the committee found there. In terms of that, that's all I have. Like I mentioned, I should mention the caveat. These are just our suggestions from our committee. Aaron and the co-sponsors, I know there was a lot. You have the complete right to reject our suggestions. And that's completely fine. It's up for the full Senate to decide. What I will be doing going forward is, like I said, I'll be submitting the formal resolution or formal amendment from the Committee on the Constitution to the co-sponsors as well as Sarah to take a look at, to be placed on the agenda for discussion next week. At that time, you may vote yes or no, as well as the co-sponsors, if they believe their intention has been significantly altered, which there is I will not deny, there is the possibility that that is true. They have the option to come up with another resolution or order or amendment. But that's what our committee has found. We believe this is most in line with the Constitution, not only now, but going forward with our agenda in terms of how we are able to take such branches of the student union that serve no true purpose currently and adapt them to a specific, general, concise manner to more effectively and efficiently operate the student union. If you have any questions, I won't take them now, but I'll take them at any time via email or after this, just to save on time, especially from the co-sponsors. But that's what we found. I'll have it all written up by Sunday for you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas. You were ahead of the game. I was going to ask if you wanted to take any questions, but his inbox is open. So I also am now realizing that at the beginning of our meeting, I did not smile upon a motion to limit meeting time to 90 minutes, which I would highly encourage given COVID-19 cleaning procedures, as well as the fact that we do have two rather large resolutions coming up. So I would just like to say that I would smile upon a motion to limit meeting time at 90 minutes. Yes, Lainey. All right, do I hear a second? Great, can we have a vote on that? All in favor? And all opposed? Okay, wonderful. Our meeting time is now capped at 90 minutes, and I would love to invite, I believe, Connor Delaney to speak on SS 2021-18, which is a resolution in support of upholding the preponderance of evidence standard in Title IX and other sex-based misconduct cases. So Connor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Having learned from Grace earlier the difficulty of keeping the laptop there, I am going to move the podium. Beautiful. Good to get a workout in at the Senate meeting. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Connor Delaney. I'm new here. So it's my pleasure to serve as a voting member of the Senate in the capacity of off-campus president. And it's my distinct pleasure to be reading this resolution. Basically, it is a long resolution, and I just wanted to give like a high-level overview of kind of what's going on. You heard it from Ms. Hoffman-Harding a few weeks ago. Basically, there are a couple different evidentiary standards on the books at Notre Dame, and because of changes in federal guidelines, we need to pick one of them. Abby and Meredith, Abby Wolf being the director of university policy, and Meredith Wilson the director of the GRC for student government, put a ton of research into this. And basically what we found is it would just be a huge blunder to choose anything other than the preponderance of evidence standard. So without further ado, I'll be reading this resolution. I encourage you to follow along. It is a long one. It is a long one. Whereas the preponderance of evidence standard means that a claim presented for administrative review must be more likely true than not, or greater than 50% likelihood of being true for the outcome to end in sanctions against a respondent. Whereas the clear and convincing standard means that a claim presented for administrative review must be highly and substantially more likely to be true than untrue. The fact finder must be convinced that the contention is highly probable for the outcome to end in sanctions against a respondent. Whereas a resolution agreement between the University of Notre Dame and the Office of Civil Rights in 2011 called on Notre Dame to document in writing already existing policies, including the use of a preponderance of evidence. Whereas at Notre Dame, only appeals of Title IX cases with severe sanctions for faculty respondents have previously used a clear and convincing standard, while hearings with student respondents have consistently used preponderance of evidence. Whereas new national guidelines from the Department of Education requires schools to select one of two standards of evidence, the preponderance of evidence standard or the clear and convincing evidence standard, and to apply the selected standard evenly to proceedings for all students and employees, including faculty. Whereas the preponderance of evidence standard has been used for 657 student cases, 153 staff cases, and 20 faculty cases in the past 5 years at Notre Dame, according to the Office of Institutional Equity and Notre Dame General Counsel. Whereas the severe sanctions process and clear and convincing standard were used for 0 faculty cases in the past 5 years, according to the Office of Institutional Equity and Notre Dame General Counsel. Whereas these numbers indicate that a universal shift to clear and convincing standard would have a more pervasive impact on students than it would on faculty, for more student cases experience a change in evidentiary standards than faculty cases. Whereas a student petition created in response to the new national guidelines calling for the establishment of a preponderance of evidence as the standard of evidence in all campus sexual misconduct, harassment, and discrimination cases, among other provisions, garnered over 500 signatures. Whereas 86% of those students who indicated that they had experienced non-consensual sexual intercourse on Notre Dame's 2018 Sexual Conduct and Campus Climate Questionnaire report did not report the assault to the university. And of those who chose not to report, 60% listed, I think that reporting wouldn't solve anything as a barrier to reporting. Whereas 57% of those students who indicated that they had experienced non-consensual sexual intercourse on Notre Dame's 2018 Sexual Conduct and Campus Climate Questionnaire report noted their not wanting to go through the university process as a reason, and 42%, admitted that they did not trust the university process as a reason for not reporting. Whereas a change to a more stringent standard of evidence raises the concern that the potential complainants feeling doubtful that cases would be ruled in their favor will not report instances of sexual, sorry, I lost myself here. Instances of assault and harassment to the university, thus exacerbating the above figures. Whereas a report from the Association for the Student Conduct Administration explains that standards other than preponderance, quote, imply that the institution prefers that the accused student remain a member of the community over the complainant. And such messages do not contribute to a culture that encourages victims to report sexual assault. Whereas the Title IX university policies statement that our culture of respect means that no type of sexual or discriminatory harassment is tolerated, encompasses those cases where a lack of tangible evidence may result in some shadow of a doubt. Whereas the Dear Colleague letter, a document offering guidance on the Title IX procedures that was issued by the Department of Education in 2011 and in effect until it was rescinded in 2017, provides that, quote, grievance procedures that use this higher standard are inconsistent with the standard of proof established for violations of civil rights law and are thus not equitable under Title IX. Therefore, preponderance of evidence is the appropriate standard for investigating allegations of sexual harassment or violence. Whereas the American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit that sought to block the new Title IX regulations from going into effect, in part due to their provisions that schools may choose a clear and convincing standard and further discouraging survivors from reporting. Whereas the university has implemented interim measures that universally applies the preponderance of evidence standard to Title IX cases with both student and faculty respondents until November 20th of 2020, and must decide on the permanent change by that date. Whereas it will be more challenging for survivors of sexual violence to reach a ruling in their favor and thus begin to achieve justice and healing if Notre Dame chooses to enact a higher evidentiary standard. It is resolved by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame du Lac that the Faculty Senate and the Academic Council should support student concerns and recommend upholding the preponderance of evidence standard across all Title IX cases. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Connor. That was incredibly well researched and well written. I can now open the floor for any questions, and I'll remind you that those questions can be directed at any number of the co-sponsors listed on the resolution. Yeah, Patrick.
Thanks for reading that. I just have a question. In this, you cited a lot of statistics that were support for trying to get students to report their instances. Is that what this would be affecting? Like, is the goal to try to get to like 100% of incidents being supported, or I'm sorry, reported? Is that what we're trying to go? Like, are people not reporting their instances, and that's why we're trying to choose this?
Yeah, Abby, would you like to come on down, please? Awesome, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abby Wolf. I'm the Director of University Policy, if I haven't met you yet. As to your question, you're somewhere back there. I think the issue is, and I think it's hard to tell in the resolution because there's so much going on, but this actually isn't a change. Notre Dame has used preponderance, and already, as you can see, our statistics on reporting are not as great as they should be. But due to the Department of Education's changes, they have to pick between these two. And so we're really just recommending that they stay at what we have been, because we already struggle with reporting, and we worry that if we were to raise the standard even higher, when people are already so nervous to report, that would make that all the more worse for people who are trying to report, if that makes sense.
And Patrick, if I can add to Abby's beautiful answer, in my capacity as co-sponsor, not in my capacity as chair, I would just like to draw your attention to bottom of page 1, where you can see statistically that in the past 5 years, it have been 657 student cases versus only 20 faculty cases and only 0 actually that went through the severe sanctions process. So I think those statistics are very telling as well. And the intention here is just to not create another barrier to reporting, which is also already a very challenging process. Yeah, Niels.
Yeah, so that actually brings up my question, which was, given that there were 0 cases that were processed through severe sanctions and parent standards, it seems as though like what we're doing here is already common practice, I guess, or the only practice. So would this just be like formulating it as the only process moving forward? Like this is what we're already doing, right?
Yes, so it's very complicated. Basically, since they're trying, it's only like you said, there have been 0 cases in the past 5 years that have actually used that standard. And it's because that standard is only used in like very severe appeals of only faculty cases. And so basically like no cases in the past 5 years have even involved faculty and been that severe that that would need to be used. So that's why we're like, it's a little bit silly if we were to change everything based on this hypothetical situation that actually very rarely would ever come up. So yes, we're just asking them to please consider keeping it where it is, since this is already what we use most of the time, and changing that small section of faculty cases would change very little realistically.
I think too, Neil, just to add on to that as well, the difference between the last 5 years is now is the new Department of Education policy, which mandates that there must only be one standard applied to all. And so we kind of had this loophole in the past, or that would apply to different particular cases in that context. Now that is not allowed. Now there has to be one or nothing. And we're just hoping it goes this way. Yeah, Niels again.
I don't know how much this has to do with the resolution, how much of it's just like a general inquiry. But if they have never used the severe sanctions or transition standards, why do you guys think that there's just like campus dialogue that the complainants will, I don't know, be like treated as like subsidiary to the defendant? I don't know if that makes sense, but like if the standard is already such that it does value what the complainant is bringing to the table, why do you guys think that like this will change anything when it has never happened in corollary?
Yeah, I think if I can start on this, one of the resolved in here talks about how experts see this as the only standard that treats both the complainant and I guess the defendant. I'm sorry. Yeah, equally. So I think any notion that it is favoring one side is a misinterpretation.
Yeah, and I think that that is kind of what we're arguing. I think that we believe that this standard of evidence, and that's why Notre Dame has used it in the past, values both sides equally, as opposed to making it really difficult for complainants to make their case. And as far as, I think you're asking a little bit too, like, why are people so hesitant and already feel like complainants have so much on their shoulders? And I think that also just has to do with the general nature of reporting. Like we said, it is a very difficult process in general. And that is another thing that we can continue to work on. But like we said, this is really just one step. We're not trying to make it any harder when there are already a lot of barriers in the process.
Yeah, and one final clarifying point on barriers as well. I think something that's different in this context now with the new DOE regs versus the last 5 years is that now cross-examination is a part of the process, which is an incredibly grueling thing to go through. And so I think that there is fear that reporting numbers will be even lower once survivors understand that they may have to go through a cross-examination, which wasn't the case in the past. So this is just a way to eliminate one of those barriers because another one has just been imposed.
Oh, so cross-examination will be it.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Further questions, folks? Yeah, Madison.
Are you guys fairly confident the university will stick to the preponderance of evidence standard? Just because, you know, like with the email that they sent out, it still seems like they're kind of deciding, but since, like with all the research that you gave us, it's pretty much the only standard anyway, so I guess it just confuses me as to why the university is still kind of looking into it and still figuring it out. So are you guys pretty confident that they're just going to stick with the preponderance of evidence?
I think that we have received a lot of support from some people in administration, including like Aaron Hoffman-Harding, Aaron Oliver, for keeping preponderance of evidence, which I know we have really appreciated in our conversations. Part of the reason that we're specifically directing this resolution towards Faculty Senate and Academic Council is because since that small section of cases that is the one that's changing is for basically like if a tenured faculty were going to be dismissed over a case. And so basically faculty are just worried about protections in their cases because that's obviously a very serious matter. And we do understand that. But we think that there are other ways, and that's what we have been talking about on this ad hoc committee, is like there are still other ways to provide protections for faculty if that kind of case were to ever come up. Like having I know they've talked about having a faculty like panel of peers who is part of the judgment process. And so we're much more favoring those kinds of protections as opposed to changing the standard of evidence for everyone so that faculty can keep that. So I do feel that there are some people very adamantly in favor of keeping preponderance, but it's just a long series of conversations. And I do think that they are looking for student feedback, and they have heard me and Sarah talk way too much. And so I think that they would really appreciate a broader sense from the student body because they're always asking us, they're like, what do other people think? And I'm like, I'm trying to tell you, this is a concrete way for us to say, students do really support this. It's not just us.
Absolutely. You know, Abby is spot on. And just to give you some statistical backing to that as well, the two of us delivered a presentation at the first Faculty Senate meeting of the year that looked pretty similar to this resolution with similar research statistics, things along that line. And it was a pretty split vote. It wound up being 48-52 in favor of preponderance of evidence. And I think that pretty much unanimously, the faculty understands that preponderance of evidence is best for students. And what if in an ideal world, these regulations would not have been imposed because I think everyone was really comfortable with the way we were operating before with the two different standards for the different contexts and different groups. I think in the faculty context, they are a bit concerned about their own situation and their tenure in particular. And so I think that's what's really tough here, that we have to do one for everyone when it would be best to have those two different standards apply. And so I think people are feeling conflicted right now versus what's best for students versus what may be best for them and their colleagues with things such as tenure. Yeah, of course. Any further questions? Okay, can we vote on that motion? All in favor? And all opposed? All right, we are now in debate. Any points of debate folks would like to raise? Yeah, Ben.
I just want to make a quick comment of support for this resolution. I sit on the University Policy Department, the Abby chairs, and so I haven't been directly involved in the writing of this resolution, but I have been kind of hearing how the process has been going. Just to provide a little more context, Faculty Senate, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, only meets once a month. And because the deadline for the university to state this is our standard of evidence is November 20th, there are only 2 more meetings. So time is of the essence on this issue, and I do think, as Student Senate, we're representing student interests, and I think the consensus, even from faculty who disagree with changing to preponderance of evidence, the consensus is that preponderance of evidence helps students. So it's very well researched. We put a lot of time into this, so I encourage us to pass this resolution.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. Yes, I can't tell with the light. Is that Jordan? Yeah. Okay, go for it.
I'm also on the university policy department, and I want to second what Beth was saying. I think that really transitioning to all preponderance of evidence is really going to ensure that survivors of sexual assault or violence are speaking up, even when it's like really tough and really challenging for them. So I think it's great that
Thank you, Jordan. Any other further points of debate? Yeah, Ricardo.
Again, moved and seconded. What happened said, I motion to close debate and move to the final vote.
Do I hear a second? All right, we can vote on that motion. All in favor? And all opposed? Okay, wonderful. We have now entered our final vote on SS 2021-18, which is a resolution in support of upholding the preponderance of evidence standard in Title IX and other sex-based misconduct cases. I'd now like to ask if you are in favor, please raise your hand. Great, and if you're opposed, please indicate that. Okay, wonderful. The resolution passes. Thank you so much to the co-sponsors for all your hard work. Great. Okay, moving onward and upward, we now are on agenda item F, which is a discussion regarding a petition calling for the resignation of President John Jenkins, CSC, due to his failed leadership amid the COVID-19 crisis. And I would like to invite David Hongs, as Judicial Counsel is the official Senate sponsor of this resolution, to read it.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And as she said, because this is a petition.
Can you turn it on?
Oh, sure. That better? Good. Because this is a petition, it needs a formal sponsor in the Senate. And so Judicial Council is formally sponsoring this resolution on behalf of the students who signed it. So a resolution calling for the resignation of President John Jenkins, CSC, due to his failed leadership amid the COVID-19 crisis. Whereas University President Father John Jenkins, CSC, was seen on September 26, 2020, at the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the United States Supreme Court in the Rose Garden of the White House. Whereas Father Jenkins' participation in this event was in direct breach of the university's COVID-19 procedures, as he was recorded shaking hands with several unmasked individuals and photographed sitting without a mask in close proximity to other attendees. Whereas it has become publicly recognized that attendees of the nomination were required to test negative for COVID-19 before entering the Rose Garden, but it is widely known that rapid testing is highly ineffective and that members of the Notre Dame community are expected to adhere to all COVID-19 regulations at all times, even if they have already contracted and recovered from the virus, or if they have recently tested negative. Whereas students, faculty, and staff have also been asked to refrain from unnecessary travel at this time, yet Father Jenkins traveled across the country to participate in a large gathering. Whereas a professor's nomination to the US Supreme Court is significant and could be framed as necessary travel, but Father Jenkins could have fully participated in the event while following COVID-19 guidelines, as Joseph A. Matson, Dean and Professor of Law, G. Marcus Cole demonstrated. Whereas this is Father Jenkins' second public infraction of COVID-19 protocol, which has been outlined on the here.nd.edu website, as images of Father Jenkins posing closely with over 20 members of the Farley Hall community were circulated on August 6, 2020. Whereas the student body promptly received an email apology from Father Jenkins, which stated, "I am sorry for my poor example, and I am recommitting to do my best." Whereas on September 23rd, Father Jenkins sent an email about plans for the spring semester and wrote, "Let each of us recommit to doing our part to keep this community healthy and remain together here on campus. Please remember to do the following. 1, wear your mask. 2, practice physical distancing." Whereas Father Jenkins' public displays of disregard for public health directly contradict his commitment to the Notre Dame community, directly endanger the safety of students, faculty, and staff, and also cast a negative light on the Notre Dame community as a whole, which has largely stepped up to the task of keeping one another safe. Whereas students living on and off campus at Notre Dame have been unwaveringly held to the standards set forth by the COVID-19 response unit, and those who have not adhered to safety guidelines have received disciplinary actions consistent with their indiscretion, including several students being dismissed from the university for gathering in large groups without masks. Whereas Father Jenkins has frequently reminded us that we must consistently hold each other accountable to the standards of this community for the safety and well-being of all members, and he can no longer in good conscience call the student body, faculty, and staff to adhere to the safety protocol that he ignores. Resolved by the Student Senate of the University of Notre Dame du Lac, on behalf of the entire student body and the Notre Dame family, calls for the resignation of Father John Jenkins, CSC, as university president, effective immediately, for failure to comply with COVID-19 protocols.
Thank you so much for that presentation, David. I'll now open the floor to discussion, either points of discussion or questions that can be directed to David, as he is the official, Judicial Council being the official Senate sponsor of this petition, unless David decides he would like to yield his time to another participant in the room. So I'll ask for any points of discussion or any questions directed at David. Yeah, Niels.
I'm just not sure if this is, like, are we discussing this or is it a formal resolution tonight?
Currently, we're just discussing it. You guys have the agency to bring it towards a vote if you so choose, but the first step is just points of discussion and questions. Yes, is that Libby?
Sure, I believe we have the writers of the petition here tonight. May I yield my time to them?
Yes, absolutely. From a logistical perspective, I do believe Judicial Council has verified 213, but you may indeed yield your time. Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, Lainey.
So I guess this is also just kind of a logistical question. If we did vote yes on it, how much power does the student senate even have over these kinds of decisions? Because I feel like it's not really our power to force the president to resign.
Sure, this would be a resolution just like any other, recommendations, Father Jenkins, or to whoever it's directed.
Yes, a resolution has no binding power, but it is a recommendation on behalf of the student body. I believe, Thomas, did you have something to say or no? Okay, good stuff. Yeah, Connor.
Are there any other resolutions on tonight's agenda that recognize the same actions, but in a manner that doesn't call for resignation?
Yes, new business. Looks like there'll be one coming up, SS 2021-19.
Yep, absolutely. To further clarify that, Connor, due to agenda capacity and due to the order in which I received those resolutions, it is new business item C, but you're more than welcome to bring it up in this discussion at this time if you would like. Yeah, further. Who is it up there? I'm so sorry. Oh, it's Dan. Go for it.
Discussion, I think Father Jenkins was pretty clear that he apologizes for his irresponsible actions, however irresponsible they may have been, given the nature of what he did. I don't think this is at all appropriate for the Senate or even the students to ask him to do. By willingly quarantining himself, I think that's more than enough punishment for the president of our university for attending a nomination event for a professor to the Supreme Court, the highest in the United States. I think this is just kind of a low blow and a shot at Father Jenkins that is just unwarranted. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think it'd be appropriate to yield my time to the writers of the petition again on this one.
And you're more than free to come down if you would like to use the mic, but whatever you feel comfortable with.
We have another one.
You want to sanitize that one, David? Okay, perfect. We'll just sanitize it real quick for you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having us. My name is Patrick Kelly Dutile, and I'm a junior in Dunn Hall. And I'm one of the writers of this petition, along with.
My name is Makira Walton. I am a junior in Pangbourne Hall. I am one of the co-authors of the petition.
And I'm Ashton Weber. I'm also a junior and I live off campus and I'm also a co-author.
And to your question, yeah, I think we all definitely recognize the idea that this is indeed a resolution and it has no real, it doesn't carry like the force of law, so to speak. And it does seem somewhat extreme, I think you could argue. But I think in that lies one of the reasons why we've decided to take this route, because we understand that, we have no power to ask Father Jenkins to resign, formally. This is, more of a recommendation, as was said earlier. I think it is our duty, seeing the leader of our community and, the ultimate power in deciding these guidelines, by which we operate in the university community. By seeing those violations and by seeing this hypocrisy, I think it is necessary for us to take the strongest measures possible, not only to express our discontent with the fact that Father Jenkins was in direct violation of COVID-19 protocols and thus posing a danger to himself and others, but also purely for the hypocrisy itself, because I believe that, and I think all three of us believe that whether or not you agree with the COVID guidelines, it is inappropriate to subject yourself to one standard and subject the students under the university, under the university's authority to different standards.
Yeah, and I want to point you to a line towards the bottom of the resolution. I don't know exactly which one it is, but we do mention that Father Jenkins has repeatedly signed emails and correspondence to the student body asking us to follow these protocols. And we believe that he can no longer, in good conscience, call the student body to follow protocol that he ignores. And because that's part of his capacity as president, we believe he needs to step down from being the person in charge of sending those messages if he can't follow them as well.
I'll just add one final point. To your point about the fact that he has already apologized in his message to us, which we did write this before the email, so there wasn't really any time to address any of the statements that he did make. He never explicitly apologized for the direct actions he took. He said that he made an error in judgment, a mistake. It was an accident. Unfortunately, when you look at the pictures of him, he is sitting next to the dean of the law school, who is wearing a mask, who is following COVID safety guidelines put out by the university. So it was indeed a conscious choice by Father Jenkins. Whether you do think that he was trying to be malicious in intent, it was a conscious decision, and his email apologizing to us does not reflect that. So that's, I think, why we still are kind of putting the full force of our brunt behind this resolution, because we don't think it was adequate.
Thank you so much for that exchange. I believe there's a hand over Zoom, actually, from Alec Breiler, so we'll get to hear his disembodied voice.
All right, so I actually brought this petition up at our Hall Gov, and I know a lot of people think it's kind of crazy to push for a resignation, but we actually had some guys in O'Neill go through the expulsion process because of breaking these violations. Exact same scenario as Jenkins, no mask, too many people, no distance. Only difference was it was their first violation and it's his second. So I think I actually heard today they might just be getting off probation. But I'm sure if it was their second violation, they'd be done. And I think it's a little unfair to hold Jenkins to a different standard than the students.
Thanks so much, Alec. I think I saw, Danny, did I see your hand first? Go for it.
Yeah, I think I got to side with his argument that we're kind of going a little too far on this petition to make Jenkins resign. And I think this calls for that we should re-examine Article 15 of the student constitution, which reads that a petition bearing the valid signatures of 200 members of the undergraduate student body shall cause the Senate to consider a specific resolution within 1 week, academic week of the presentation of the petition to the Senate. And I'm gonna say that I definitely support petitioning and hearing the voice of the undergraduate student body, but the 200 signature rule is only 2.5% of the undergraduate student body. So I honestly think that should be raised in order to have more support for different petitions. And so if we had 500 signatures backing this, I can say that it would have more value than it does now.
Thank you for that point, Danny. We'll move to Ben.
I want to raise a few points of discussion, kind of playing off of what a lot of other people have said. Three main things. First off, I want to thank you guys for bringing this to us. We appreciate your efforts. We respect your courage to come forward with this, and I certainly read this and was very. I appreciated how much thought you guys have put into this. I want to make my second point here is I want to go off of what Daniel was saying, what I believe Dan mentioned. I and the people I discussed this with in Peel Hall, the majority of us have also come to the consensus that asking for his resignation seems a bit extreme. Now, that's not to say that the frustration that the student body is demonstrating is invalid. I think it's completely valid. I was frustrated. I think we can all agree, to some extent, we were all frustrated when we saw Father Jenkins' mask with the Rose Garden. So, to extend that point, I think there is a more constructive way we can go. And you brought this up at one point, saying the goal here is to get attention and say there's a double standard going on. I think there is a more constructive way we can go about applying that message and applying that pressure, short of saying we want Father Jenkins to resign. And we've admitted it tonight that it is unrealistic to expect that. So with that in mind, I do want to point out under new business, I know you guys can see it, but there's resolution SS 2021-19, a resolution formally disapproving Reverend John Jenkins' violations of university health policy and encouraging further action. So coming up soon, we as Senate, numerous senators, we drafted a resolution that essentially says we disapprove of what he's done, and we recognize the frustration of the student body. We believe that it's unacceptable, but we also believe that there is a constructive dialogue that should stem from this. And the bulk of that dialogue is a review of these COVID policies, asking why does Father Jenkins feel that he can participate in this event and not wear a mask, while at the same time we were asked to do so much here. So I think that considering this and passing this, it seems to send a message that strikes me as, like Dan said, a low blow. Again, that's not to invalidate frustration. That's not to invalidate your efforts. I think you hit it right, the nail right on the head by saying there is a discussion that needs to happen and the root of this, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're trying to get at is there is a double standard and we should be addressing that. And I think that's true. We should. So I just wanted to have it. Thank you again for bringing this forward.
Thank you so much for bringing up those points, Ben. I believe I saw Madison's hand next.
Yeah, so definitely off of what they were saying, I don't feel like 213 people represents the thought of the student body. And again, I think in time we can address that. But anyways, you guys said something about consistency of punishment with actions, and I don't believe that this is consistent. So I talked to people in my dorm, and they thought it was completely absurd. I feel like on Alex's point, I understand that students have been through the process of being punished for their actions, but I feel like we have to look at the circumstances. Jenkins I went to the demo group that politically went to the Supreme Court nomination. He didn't go to a party or a bar or a restaurant or something like that. He went to like a very important nomination. So I don't feel like you can kind of say that it's the same as those students who break violations and then receive punishment. But I do understand having the frustration. And I think if you guys have a chance to look at their resolution, you may be so please look at it because it doesn't only just condemn what Jenkins did, it also asks for COVID policies to be looked at. If Jenkins feels comfortable doing that, then maybe we should be changing some stuff for the students. So yeah.
Much appreciated, Madison. Can I get how many hands do we have so I can get an order for you all? Okay, we'll go Lainey. John, is that you? Yep. Okay, Lainey, John, Jack, Isabella. I saw Renee. Who's up there? Oh, Estefan. Okay, awesome. So you guys have that order. So Lainey, Jack, Isabella, Renee, Estefan. Okay, go for it.
So yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of second everything everyone's been saying. I think this is way too extremely asking for his resignation, especially when you guys kind of said you don't think it's actually gonna happen. Again, I think the resolution next week is a much more reasonable thing condemning what we did, rather than doing that. And then also to go off Madison's point, the O'Neill situation, I think is a lot different than what Jenkins did. I understand they're both irresponsible actions, but again, Jenkins was going to support the nomination of someone, a faculty member from another game, whereas the students in question hosted a party. So I think that those are two very different standards. And so having just like a set standard that like, it depends on the event where that's going on. So I feel like those shouldn't be like comparison. And then also in regards to the fact that it's his second offense, again, I don't approve of that he took the picture with those Marley girls, but also he was wearing a mask. So it's not like he was completely out of regard there. So I feel like we just need to take into consider everything and not go as so far to be like, oh, Father Jenkins should resign because he made a mistake.
Thank you, Lainey. We'll move to Jack.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I had that same point. I don't think comparing that Father Jenkins traveling to a Supreme Court nomination to kids getting kicked off for having an O'Neill disorientation party is in the same breath. I don't see how you can compare this to like a party and going to a nomination of the highest court involved. And secondly, like to call for his resignation after he did so much to get us back onto campus and then keep us on campus when like a bunch of other schools were sending kids home. I don't see how you can ask him to resign at all.
Thank you, Jack. We'll move to Isabella.
So this is more of a question because we kind of broke it down to come back to not having with you. In terms of opening a dialogue with Father Jenkins about trying to fix, fix is always a weird way to put it, but to alter and try to correct the course of action in terms of this double standard, can I direct a question to obviously the council sponsor to interact with you guys about how that sort of action kind of fits within the values. And honestly, I mean, not to validate the 200 people who signed your petition and the social media campaign that you guys ran. Kind of, how do you think that you think that's like a response that you think would be adequate to some extent, or just being able, be able to start that dialogue and work on it? Like, can you guys just kind of speak to how you feel about that?
Yeah, I'll yield to you again.
Perfect. Yeah, you're in the clear.
So I do want to respond quickly. I think a lot of you have mentioned that there's another resolution coming before you later, which is great, and we're proud of you for writing one too. But we don't agree that COVID policies on campus should be lightened up. This is not like a you get to go around maskless, so we want to situation. Like, that's not what we're arguing. So we just want to make that like really clear. Just good. Okay. Yes. Now I lost my train of thought. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to add? Yes.
So as to kind of like opening the dialogue, I will say, like, obviously if you guys pass this resolution and we say like, all right, the student body, and I do want to make clear that like you guys are representing the student body, not just us, not just the 200 plus people that signed, not even just yourselves. So obviously if you guys think that the best way to represent the student body as a whole is not to pass a resolution, we are going to be supportive in that capacity because we do understand that you guys have a duty that is to more than just us. So I do want to say that. I feel like maybe there's some not so civil eye contact going on. It's hard to tell with the masks. So I just wanted to make that very clear. And I do appreciate you guys hearing us out and letting us be a part of this process. As far as discourse goes, I think if we do say that he needs to resign, like that's not just, oh, we need to talk about this. I feel like so much of this year, so much is that stuff that's been happening is just, oh, we need to talk about this. And like us calling for him to resign, he's not going to resign. We don't control that. We have no say over that. We're not even going to sway the people who do have a say. But something that actionable, which I think, if I remember correctly, has never been done before. This has never been done. Nobody has ever called for any president of the university to resign. That is going to open up more dialogue and more discourse, in our opinions, than passing something that says we should open up dialogue and discourse. So I think, and I also want to go back to the point of, he's not comparable to student, like that's a Supreme Court nomination. These are parties. He is also the president of a foremost university who is a man. He is above the age of 25 when most scientists say the prefrontal cortex stops developing. We are 18 to 23-year-old kids. The decisions and the standards that we should be held to are not the same. I do agree with you that. I think we should hold him as the person that we are paying to run this university to a higher standard. And since he creates the standards, I'm going to add to that. Those need to be higher standards as well. So I do understand why it might feel too harsh, but honestly, to me, it feels like not enough.
Thank you, Ashton Makira. Appreciate it. Given the fact that it is 7:20, I'd like to yield to Thomas Davis.
So just so we're all clear on logistics here, you all have satisfied your constitutional obligation to consider the petition. That being said, the use of consider throughout the Constitution is fairly simple in the fact that you can do whatever you want at this point. That includes voting, tabling, et cetera, whatever you so choose. At this point, I've advised the chair definitely to vote on this. I would say, I wasn't going to say this, but just from what I heard from the petitioners, I've been very silent on substantive issues this year other than constitutional issues, but I think this applies. Passing this resolution will only hurt you in the eyes of administrators. And if you want a voice in terms of respectful dialogue with administrators going forward, this has a huge precedent. And the precedent that you're sending by passing this resolution will get picked up by major media outlets, will get picked up by administrators, and does present the potential that it shuts you off from any further dialogue with administrators going forward. Yield back to the chair.
Thank you, Thomas. I do recognize that we had two more comments, and I would like to respect those, but I also would like to take Thomas's recommendation seriously that we do bring this to a vote. But I would like to recognize both Stefan and Renee. I'll give you guys both 1 minute, and then I would recommend that we move to a vote.
Yeah, so I want to echo what Tom said. I definitely think that passing this resolution would impede our ability to engage in dialogue with administrators. Although I do agree the level of hypocrisy demonstrated by Father Jenkins was unacceptable. But I'd also like to consider that if we were to call, hypothetically, if we were to resign and follow the recommendation that we were to give with this resolution, we would be without a president leading this university. We would have to kind of rethink our entire leadership. We would have
especially because of the effective immediately wording there. And I think that would be very, very difficult for our community right now, especially with the given COVID situation. So after Esteban, I would definitely support a motion to vote on this resolution.
Thank you so much, Renee. We'll have a final comment from Estefan.
One thing, sure. Yes, I agree with Thomas. What he's saying is, I think it does set the precedent if we, all of you, like, all of you pass this. But let me just say also that we can't forget this, because this university does a lot of talking. I'm not gonna lie. The Graceville does it. They do a lot of talking, and we haven't gotten a lot done. So that's something that we have to remember, because we can let people do things and act, and then they can send out apology emails and it can be cool. In reality, we need action, we need change, we need substance. Things don't change and you don't see create some kind of call to action, some kind of substance. So although I do agree that this is a little much, we can't forget this. And I mean, me for one, I don't allow hypocrisy of people that hold themselves to different standards is fine. So I think that's my call to all of you. And
Thanks so much, Estefan. I did hear a motion from Renee to move to a vote. Do I hear a second on that? Okay, great. Can we have a vote on that motion? All in favor? Okay, and all opposed? Wonderful. We will now be moving into a vote on a petition calling for the resignation of President John Jenkins, CSC, due to his failed leadership amid the COVID-19 crisis. I think given the matter of this resolution, I would rather we not engage in a hand vote. So Thomas will be sending out a secure Google form to you all where you'll be able to cast your vote. I would remind you only voting members should vote at this time. Thank you all very much. Oh yes, it is linked. So if you guys scroll, you will see F, a number 1, and a Google form, and I would invite all voting members to vote. Thank you so much, writers, for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll give you guys a minute on this one. I know it's a rather heavy subject, so you should be able to contemplate, discern, and then cast your vote within the minute. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, we'll give you guys 30 more seconds. Just to clarify, was everyone able to access that Google form just to make sure? Okay. We'll give you a minute, no worries. Oh, are you a proxy? Okay, no worries. Would you just like to send a or nay to my email, sgalbenz@nd.edu? Oh, okay, awesome, beautiful. Just trying to be innovative. Were you able to vote, my proxy friend? Okay, great. We will close in 10 seconds. Thank you, Sam.
I should have played the Jeopardy music again. Jeez. Next time.
I now see the verified results from Thomas Davis. It does not pass. 36 nay to aye. So thank you all so much for engaging in this discussion. Very fruitful and productive. And I look forward to discussing our resolution next week as well and giving that one consideration. All right, so we can now move. I will just preface new business for next week. We will have SO 2021-09, which is our good old executive programming board to the executive committee. And we have, this will be a big kahuna, SO 2021-11, which is in order to adjust the spring semester schedule. So J Council is hard at work going through all of the dates in the Constitution and changing them to accommodate our new 10-week winter break. So big fun. And then we will have SS 2021-19, a resolution formally disapproving Reverend John Jenkins' violations of university health policy and encouraging further action. At this time, does anyone have any announcements? I know we're eager to go, but we have 4 minutes, folks. Sam.
Senior Sundays are back. Will I be you? If you are a senior, 12 to 2, library law, we'll have free donuts for you.
Amazing. Are they rise and roll?
They are rise and roll.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Cinnamon caramel is my favorite. Who do we have? Marade. Woo!
Boo.
I love that. Look at that New York pride. Isabella.
Free improv tonight, 10 p.m. Legends, be there, be square.
Fabulous. I feel like John Jenkins may play a starring role in that as well. Excited. Okay, who do we have next? Niels, is that an announcement or are you just getting up to go? Okay, cool, cool. Anybody else? Yes, who, is that Albertina? Go for it. Ooh. I would highly recommend you guys support Touter for Water. It is helping with drinking water for a small town in Ecuador that was only an hour away from where I lived for a summer. So close to my heart. Amazing cause, Albertina. Proxy friend.
Tomorrow from 10 to 11 on Fieldhouse Mall, it's just donuts with a smile. So if you want a donut, come get a donut from JCC.
Amazing. This weekend is all about donuts. Anything else, folks? Karen Kennedy. Go SAO. Exciting things. Okay. Anything else, folks? Or do I hear a motion to adjourn? Do I hear a second? Hands in the air. Okay, great. We're adjourned. Have an awesome weekend, guys.